Welcome to English Box, Easy English with Julia and Tom. If this is your first time here, this podcast helps you make English part of your daily life through small, real conversations. I'm Julia, and I'm really happy you're listening today.
And I'm Tom. Thanks for joining us. At English Box, we put English into one place. For work, for travel, for daily conversations, for meetings, interviews, and even those moments when you just want to feel more confident speaking.
You don't need an hour a day to improve. Even a few minutes every day can make a real difference.
We speak slowly and clearly so you can listen and practice anywhere while waking up and making breakfast, exercising, commuting, taking a break, lying on the sofa, or relaxing before bed. English often works best when you're learning without pressure.
And today, we're bringing you a slightly different kind of episode.
Yes, today we're not focusing on grammar or vocabulary.
We're focusing on something bigger, possibility.
We're sharing a real, inspiring story about how learning English can quietly change your life, sometimes faster than you expect.
This is the story of Mateo from Colombia. And no, he didn't become fluent overnight.
He didn't move abroad, he didn't study 10 hours a day, but in less than a year, English opened doors he never imagined.
We'll let Mateo tell his story in his own words. Listen for the feelings, the small moments, and maybe a little motivation for your own journey.
Before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through calm, natural conversations like this, please like this episode and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep creating practical lessons for you.
Tom, I know many people struggle at work because they don't feel confident in English or they don't use English at all.
That's true. Many people want to improve their English, but they delay it for years, or they study the wrong way and put too much pressure on themselves.
Mateo's story shows that progress doesn't have to be stressful, and that small, consistent steps can lead to big changes.
All right, without further ado, here's Mateo.
When fear kept me silent. Hi everyone, my name is Mateo. I'm from Colombia, and before English became part of my life, my world felt small. I had a normal life. I worked a regular job, I went home, I spent time with my family and friends. From the outside, everything looked fine, but inside I often felt limited, especially when it came to English. I had studied English before. Like many people, I learned some basics at school. I knew simple words, simple grammar. I could read a little. I could understand very slow English. But speaking? That was different. Speaking English scared me. I was afraid of making mistakes, afraid of sounding stupid, afraid that people would judge my accent, my grammar, or my vocabulary. So most of the time, I stayed quiet. I listened, I smiled, and I said nothing. Because of that fear, I stayed at the same level for years. Not because I couldn't learn, but because I didn't dare to use English. In my head, I had many excuses. I told myself English was not for people like me. I believed some common myths. I believed you had to live abroad in an English-speaking country to speak fluently. I believed you had to be very young to learn, and even though I was only in my 20s, I already felt too late. I believed you needed expensive courses, private teachers, or special talent, and because I believed those things, I didn't try seriously. At work, there were moments when English appeared, meetings, emails, opportunities to work with international clients. I understood some parts, but I didn't feel confident enough to speak. I remember sitting in meetings knowing the answer. I wanted to raise my hand, but I didn't. I remember opportunities passing by, projects, connections, conversations, and thinking, if my English were better, this could be for me. But instead of acting, I stayed silent. That silence slowly became a habit, and that habit made my world feel smaller than it needed to be. The turning point. A small moment. There was one moment that changed everything for me. It wasn't dramatic, no big speech, no sudden success, just a normal workday. But it made me very uncomfortable. At the time, I was working in an office in Colombia. It was a regular job, nothing special. One morning, my manager called for a short meeting. He told us that the company was going to work with some international clients. Some meetings would be in English, some emails too. Then he asked a simple question. Is anyone comfortable helping in English? The room went quiet. I felt my heart start beating faster. I understood English. I could read emails. I could watch videos. But speaking, that was different. My head was full of thoughts. What if I say something wrong? What if they laugh? What if my accent sounds terrible? I wanted to raise my hand. I really did, but I didn't. I looked around the room and kept my hands on the table. I stayed silent. And someone else raised their hand instead. In that moment, I felt small. Not because I was bad at my job, but because I knew I was hiding. After the meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept asking myself, how many times have I stayed quiet like this? How many chances did I miss just because I was afraid of speaking English? That evening, on my way home, something became very clear to me. Waiting was not helping. Avoiding English was not protecting me. It was limiting me. I realized I was waiting for the perfect moment, perfect time, perfect confidence, perfect English. But that moment was never coming. That night, I made a simple decision. I didn't promise to become fluent. I didn't promise to speak like a native speaker. I just told myself one sentence. I don't need perfect English. I need to start. That sentence changed how I looked at learning. English was no longer a test. It was a tool. I started small, very small. I listened to English on my way to work. I spoke to myself while cooking. I repeated simple sentences, even when they sounded awkward. And yes, it was uncomfortable. I made mistakes. I felt stupid sometimes. But I learned something important. Discomfort was not a sign that I was failing. It was a sign that I was finally moving. That moment in the meeting, when I stayed silent, became my motivation. Not because it felt good, but because it didn't. And that's what I want you to remember. Motivation doesn't always come from dreams or goals. Sometimes it comes from discomfort, from realizing you don't want to feel this way anymore. That small moment didn't change my life immediately, but it changed my direction. The process, how I actually learned. After that moment at work, I didn't suddenly become a different person. I didn't wake up at 5 in the morning to study grammar for hours. I didn't sign up for an expensive course, and I definitely didn't move to another country. What I did was much smaller and much more realistic. I stopped asking, what's the fastest way to learn English? And I started asking, what can I do every day without quitting? That question changed everything. I built my learning around my real life. In the morning, while getting ready for work, I listened to short English podcasts, not lessons, just people talking. At first, I didn't understand everything, and that was okay. I focused on catching the general idea. During my commute, I watched short videos in English, sometimes with subtitles, sometimes without. I didn't pause every sentence. I just listened, the way children listen before they speak. At home, I started talking to myself in English. Very simple things. I'm tired. I need to cook dinner. Tomorrow is a busy day. It felt strange, sometimes embarrassing, even though I was alone. But slowly, English started to feel less like a school subject and more like a language I could use. I made a lot of mistakes. Wrong grammar, wrong words, wrong pronunciation.
Before, mistakes made me stop. Now, I let them pass. I realized something important. Mistakes are not proof that you're bad at English. They're proof that you're using it. Instead of trying to speak perfectly, I focused on listening first. I noticed how people actually spoke, not how textbooks told them to speak. Short sentences, simple words, natural pauses. Little by little, my ear changed. English started to sound familiar, less noisy, less scary. Confidence didn't come from speaking fluently, it came from understanding more each week. I could follow conversations better. I could guess meaning even when I didn't know every word. And when I spoke, I stopped freezing. Some days I did a lot. Other days I did almost nothing, but I never stopped completely. That's the difference. I learned that consistency is more powerful than intensity. Studying 10 minutes every day helped me more than studying 2 hours once a week. English became part of my routine, like brushing my teeth, not exciting every day, but always there. And slowly, without noticing, I became more confident. Not perfect, not fluent, but ready to speak when the moment came. That was real progress. The results: new opportunities. The changes didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where I suddenly felt fluent. But one day, I looked back and I realized my life felt bigger. At work, things started to shift. I could understand meetings in English without feeling lost after the first sentence. I didn't catch every word, but I understood the message, and that was enough. When my manager asked questions, I didn't hide anymore. I spoke up, slowly, simply, sometimes with mistakes, but people listened. I learned that you don't need perfect English to be useful. You just need clear ideas. Soon, I was included in more meetings with international clients. I helped explain things, I followed discussions, and sometimes I asked questions, even when my voice was shaking. With that came new responsibilities, not because my English was perfect, but because I was willing to use it. And that changed how people saw me. More capable, more confident. Outside of work, English followed me into my travels. The first time I traveled abroad after improving my English, I felt nervous but excited. At airports, in cafes, in small hotels, English became my bridge. I ordered food. I asked for directions. I had short conversations with strangers. They weren't deep conversations, but they were real. I talked to a couple from Germany on a train. I shared a coffee with a traveler from Japan. I laughed with a local guide in another country. Those moments were simple, but powerful. Before, traveling meant observing. Now it meant participating. English gave me access to people, not just to information or jobs, but to human connection. I started understanding different ways of thinking, different cultures, different stories, and something else changed too. I stopped feeling small. English didn't change who I am. It didn't make me smarter or more interesting, but it gave me a voice in spaces where I used to be silent. I realized that language is not about sounding impressive, it's about being present. Looking back, I see that the real reward was not promotions or travel photos, it was confidence. The confidence to raise my hand, the confidence to start a conversation, the confidence to say, I don't know this word, but I'll try. English didn't open doors because it was perfect, it opened doors because I used it. And every time I chose to speak, even simply, the world felt a little more open. That's when I understood something clearly. English didn't give me a new life, it gave me access to the one I already had, just on a bigger scale.
what I wish I knew before. When I look back now, I realize something important. English didn't just change what I could do, it changed who I became. Before, I was impatient with myself. I wanted fast results. I wanted confidence without discomfort. Learning English taught me patience. It taught me how to stay with something even when progress was slow, even when I felt awkward, even when I wanted to quit. I also learned to trust myself. Every mistake I made, and there were many, stopped feeling like failure. Mistakes became part of the process, a sign that I was learning, not a sign that I was bad. English slowly changed the way I talk to myself. I stopped saying, "I'm not good at this," and started saying, "I'm learning." That difference matters. I want you to know this. English is not a test you pass or fail. It's a tool you use, imperfectly, personally, and at your own pace. You don't need perfect grammar to be understood. You don't need a native accent to be respected. You don't need expensive courses or a dramatic life change. What you need is permission to start where you are. If you feel stuck right now, I understand. I stayed at the same level for years because I was afraid of making mistakes. I was waiting for confidence to arrive before I spoke. But confidence doesn't come before action. It comes after. If I could give you one piece of advice, it would be this. Start small. So small that it feels almost too easy. Listen to English for 5 minutes. Say one sentence out loud. Repeat one phrase. Do it today, not tomorrow, not next month. Today. Because starting is more powerful than planning. English didn't change my life because I became fluent. It changed my life because I started. And if I can start, quietly, imperfectly, and scared, you can too. Take the first small step. The rest will follow.
That brings us to the end of today's special episode. We hope Mateo's story reminded you that learning English is not about being perfect, it's about being brave enough to begin.
Mateo didn't change his life by studying harder than everyone else. He changed it by showing up, a little bit every day, even when it felt uncomfortable.
If there's one idea we'd love you to take away from this episode, it's this. English is not a test you pass, it's a tool you grow into.
And growth doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, during short moments, small habits, and simple sentences you practice when no one is watching.
Before we finish, let's pause for a moment. Think about where you are right now in your English journey. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. You don't need a big plan. Just ask yourself one question. What is one small thing I can do today?
It could be listening to English for 5 minutes. It could be saying one sentence out loud. Or it could simply be kinder to yourself when you make a mistake. All of that counts.
If you enjoyed this episode and stories like Mateo's, please like this episode and subscribe to English Box. It really helps us continue creating calm, realistic content for people learning English in real life.
And if Mateo's story connected with you, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment and finish this sentence. English could change my life by... For example, English could change my life by helping me talk to more people.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Be patient with yourself, trust the process, and remember, small steps matter.
We'll be back soon with another conversation to help you make English part of your daily life.
Until then, take care and keep going.
See you next time.